Hi everyone, as you know, there is a significant weather event that is on the way, namely Hurricane Sandy. This is the forecast track from the National Hurricane Center, and as you can see, she's going to be moving northeast towards the 70 west line, then hooking back to the northwest towards New Jersey. And I just wanted to let you know that my point for this video is to show you that a landfall in New Jersey does not mean that we're out of the woods by any stretch of the imagination. So here's what I want to show you just to prove that. The first thing that I'll show is the center of Sandy is still offshore of New Jersey, but you can see the wind field is very large, and these are all values right here, 50 to 60 to 70 knots at the surface. And you can see some of these values are sneaking into eastern Massachusetts, even though the center is still maybe 100 miles to 200 miles to our south. So the reason why that happens is as the storm converts to a regular nor'easter, the intense eye wall energy and angular momentum is then transferred out throughout the rest of the circulation as that warm core process begins to weaken. So instead of being a tight eye wall with really intense winds, there's slightly less intense winds, but throughout a greater area of the circulation. So you can see that here. There's plenty of wind barbs around the center that are showing 70, 80 knot gusts at the surface, mainly over the ocean, but they do start to encroach on the seaboard of New Jersey and Massachusetts and New York City. So as this low moves to the west towards New Jersey, that forces a ton of water towards southern New England and then down in the Long Island Sound to New York City, where they can expect possibly a severe coastal flood event in the city itself, possibly shutting down subway systems and all their transportation. So that could be a really significant event down there. Another piece of this is a little bit of a characteristic issue that you might want to be aware of. This is the warm core that I'm discussing. It's warmer than the rest of the environment around it, since these are temperatures. So these are warmer temperatures. In the event that this doesn't happen as modeled, the National Hurricane Center is going to stop issuing hurricane watches and warnings. So we'll probably just have high wind warnings, which may confuse the crap out of you because you're not really sure, well, is it a hurricane or what? What's going on? Well, I'm just letting you know right now that whether it's classified as a hurricane or not, the wind is still going to be severe. It's not any less of a system by any stretch of the imagination. So that's really the deal here. This storm's coming up and passing just to our south, probably heading into New Jersey or maybe even Long Island. There's some evidence that this may be a little bit further north than what this model is showing right here. So the National Hurricane Center and the National Weather Service have put together some information here as to what to expect. And mainly the inland residents is what many of us are, unless you live right on the coastline. So be sure to have plenty of batteries on hand for flashlights, AM/FM radios, and your NOAA weather radio. Expect prolonged power outages. This is the key. I've heard values of power outages could be around 7 to 10 days to fix. So if that happens, you need to be prepared to not have power in your house, no heat, possibly no water for that long. So food, water, non-perishable food. Don't buy produce, please. I've seen enough of that. Make sure you're ready for this. Here's a little bit more evidence in case you're not convinced yet. This is the wind profile. So this white line is where 5,000 feet is, and then this is the ground. All of these winds are in knots. So even though the values are really 40 to 50 knots, very close down to the bottom here, it gets up to 100 knots around 5,000 feet. And let me just tell you, in strong thunderstorms or heavy rain, this momentum can be transferred down to the surface in a reduced fashion, slightly reduced fashion. Usually it's around 20% reduction from 5,000 feet down to the surface. So a 20% reduction would put 80 knots at the surface, which is a gust to 90 miles per hour. So in some places that will happen. It's hard to say where exactly, but if you follow the model that I just showed you with the wind structure as it's shown here, generally right along the coast, within maybe 10 to 15 miles of the coastline, is where you can get those strong wind gusts. And inland, maybe 40 to 50 miles inland to Worcester possibly, you can expect gusts to 60 or 70. So it's still a wide impact. It's in inland regions are not safe from the strong winds either. This is becoming a severe nor'easter. It's a combination of a mid-latitude low, a nor'easter, and a tropical low, Sandy. The last time this happened was 1991, the perfect storm. This is essentially the perfect storm part 2. And this is what it looks like when it's much closer to the coast. You heard about the Andrea Gale. It had to face waves of 100 feet high. While I'm not saying that will happen again, it's not impossible. The waves that they were encountering were out here, east of George's Bank. Here, the low pressure is much closer to the coastline, so the damage that it can cause will be greater. Please, heed warnings, follow my status updates, and be ready, because Monday night is when the strongest winds are coming in. And after that, it could be a day, 2 days, or a week before the powers can come back on. It just depends on how much of this wind can get down to the surface. If what the models are showing, if that wind gets down to the surface, then we will have widespread wind damage, and it will take the crews a long time to get the power grid back up and working properly. So be prepared for the worst, and if I'm wrong, that's fine. But every ounce of data that I have here says that this is probably a once in a 50-year storm, maybe even once in a 100-year storm. We have no comparable event to it other than the perfect storm, but it was further offshore. So please be prepared, and if you have any questions, feel free to ask. I'll have a lot of them, I'm sure. So I'll try my best. All I can say is please be ready. Thank you.